So I'm Daphne Carnegy and I'm a Maiolica potter, and I've been potting professionally since 1980, so it's quite a long time. But I came to pottery via a rather circuitous route, in that I did a degree in French at Nottingham and then worked in publishing for a bit. And while I was working in publishing, my boss, Mary Flint, she was doing a pottery evening class, and she said, "It's great, you know, you should come along." And so I went along and very quickly got hooked. Anyway, some years later I got a job in France. I moved to France. While I was in France, this is down in Aix-en-Provence, I met a potter who needed some help, so I used to go along and help her load the kiln and watch her and fire some things. And then everywhere I went in France, when we went on trips, I would always look out the potteries. And in the Ardèche, there was a pottery called Salavas, and there was a potter there called Gilles. He said, if you're interested in pottery, you should go to this potter in Burgundy called Jean-Paul Béton, because every year he takes on a stagiaire, like an apprentice. And it's in this tiny little village in the Mâconnais, and very beautiful and so on. So that's exactly what I did. And I ended up staying a year in this little village, watching Jean-Paul throw. I learnt to throw almost uniquely through watching him. He never once watched me throw, but I learnt through watching him, and I could throw in my spare time. But I learnt so much about kiln packing and workshop practice, and it was the most amazing time. And after that year, I did a sort of mini Tour de France, working in various potteries as a thrower, so I felt quite pleased that I got to that stage. And then I felt the need to have more of an art training, because I'd learnt a lot of the practicalities. So I'd heard about Harrow and how famous Harrow was, for, particularly for throwing and for pottery in general. So I came back to England and I got onto the Harrow course, and that was really, you know, that really convinced me that that was what I wanted to do. So during my time in France, I fell in love with European earthenware techniques, notably slipware and tin-glazed earthenware, known in France as faïence, in Italy as Maiolica. But these are classic earthenware techniques, and I love the freshness of earthenware. Tin-glazed earthenware is fraught with potential problems, because you're painting directly on the unfired surface of the glaze. So the process basically is that you make the pieces, you throw the pieces, add handles, whatever. Then the pieces are biscuit fired, and then they are waxed, the feet are waxed and so on, and then dipped in this quite thick white glaze. If the glaze is too thin, it looks very mean, and a lot of the body shows through. Although that's another look which, you know, some people might like. If it's too thick, it tends to crawl. So it's because it's a very viscous glaze, so it's not mobile. So it's very susceptible to pinholing and crawling. The oxides or underglaze colours, or mixtures of both, are applied directly onto the raw glaze. So in a way it's a bit like painting on blotting paper. So you can't hang about, you have to get a flow with the brush. Because the more you hang about, the thicker the colour gets, and again that can produce blistering and other sorts of problems. So when you're using oxides in particular, that's things like cobalt oxide, copper oxide, manganese dioxide, the natural oxides. It's very difficult to know what you're exactly the thickness or the colour of what you're painting, because the colour value changes so completely with the firing. So cobalt, which looks black or grey when you paint it on, will come out bright blue. Copper is the same, it will go black and then fire green. Manganese will look black, they all look black, most of them look black, and will fire to a soft purple. But the thickness, again, is crucial, the thickness of the oxide. So that really is trial and error, and just familiarising yourself with the qualities of the oxides. So at the moment I'm using a mixture of blue, cobalt blue, and a black stain, to which I add quite a lot of clear glaze. Because again, the black can be quite refractory, so the clear glaze just helps it blend in better. So then the pieces go back into the kiln for the glaze firing, which is, I fire to, on the pyrometer it's about 1080, but in actual fact if you're using cones it's equivalent to about 1120. Then it's a total surprise opening the kiln. It's always a surprise. However well you know things, you're never quite sure how thick or intense the colours are going to be. William Newland, who was a great potter in the 50s, he once likened earthenware to Mozart and stoneware to Beethoven. So I liked the liveliness and the freshness of the earthenware.